We can go ahead and get started. It is Monday, March 21st. All right, John, I will hand things over to you for the legislative
Madam
update.
Chair, thank you, members of the Legislative Committee. So Rusty and I will tag team a little bit, and I'm going to really defer to him kind of for the preliminary legislative update. But Chris Glass couldn't be here today. His dad is having bypass surgery, so please kind of keep him in your thoughts. It should be a relatively normal bypass apparently, but yeah, just that's why Chris couldn't be here. He does his regular updates, so between Rusty and myself and Chris, who's not here, we will provide you with an update. So Rusty, you want to go first and then I'll piggyback?
Yeah, we can talk about a couple of things. One of those would not be in Chris's update. I sent it to you earlier. So
Yep, the dyslexia.
Yeah, so the Senate will be considering dyslexia legislation tomorrow, 380, 381, 382. And these are bills that essentially require school districts to screen every kid K through 3 for dyslexia, whether or not they show any signs or not, essentially. That's sort of the main proponent of the bill. There's a lot of other things. There's been a bunch of changes. I've not had a chance to look through them yet. Our special education director, who obviously has since retired, had some concerns with it. The school community has not been overly supportive of what the Senate is trying to do. It is a bipartisan package. It isn't. It's being mostly led by a Democrat out of Ann Arbor, Senator Jeff Irwin, who I believe has good intentions about what he's trying to do. But there's just been some concerns back and forth between the school community about what is diagnosis as opposed to identifying characteristics that require further intervention, right? And so that's what those, they're working through that. I sent the subs over. Hopefully we can get them to our folks and get
So,
response
and
back.
I've already forwarded them to Tony Moore, our new special education executive director. She's going to share it out. She was also going to send it to Laura and have Laura look at it, so.
Okay, so our position is that we do not support this, or we're just gonna wait and see what happens?
We don't know yet.
We don't know yet. We don't officially have any position
All
on
right.
this yet.
Okay, do we know who's going to fund this when we have to do testing for,
I think that's part of the concern, is this is kind of an unfunded mandate.
Okay.
That,
another one?
It also increases testing time, which is obviously that push and pull that
Sure.
we're always
They come
hearing
out of the
about.
classroom, right?
We represent a benchmark assessment company, and they're, basically wanting these benchmarks to serve as the screeners, even though that's not always what they're designed for, right? So there's a lot of sort of issues going on. I've not, this has been a particular pet project of Senator Irwin, and Senator Tice, who's the chair, has worked with him to try and get into a position where she can be supportive. The changes that were made were significant. Like I said, I don't know enough by looking at the changes to know whether it's okay or not. So that's why we wanted to get it to John as soon as we got it. And then they'll probably report it out tomorrow, and then they're gonna go on break for, spring break for a couple of weeks. So it's not gonna pass the Senate yet. We don't even know where the House would come down on it. So we're not late in the game, we're just sort of right in the middle of it. And so that is something that we're gonna wanna keep a really close eye on as it moves through. So, I had a question, what did we end up with days where we were not in school or not at 75%? Did we end up at 7?
we are at
We're at 6.
6.
So we're good.
Yep.
And
Barring any
and it's
snowstorm.
March,
Wait,
it's
say,
March
barring any
21st.
snowstorms.
Come on,
or-
baby.
Yeah.
I put my plow away, so it can't snow anymore. It can't, it's done. Okay, well, that's good. That sort of gives us some breathing room there. The other couple of bills that passed, 726 allowed for a retired teacher to come back and retire sooner without an impact. I think it was a year down to 2 months, if I have that.
That's right.
Right. And then 618, we worked closely with Chris Glass on 618, which basically allow the school bond revolving loan fund to charge an interest rate that's market rate as opposed to the floor, which is at 3%. Interest rates were under 3. They couldn't charge a district under 3. They had to charge them to 3%. And we got that passed through the House and the Senate in a little over a week. So we were able to get that passed, and that was something that Chris had been working on. It's about a $10 million savings for districts around the state.
So both of those have been signed, passed that, they hadn't been signed by the government yet though, have they?
I think they've been presented. I don't think they've been signed yet.
I think that's right,
Yep,
too.
yep, they've been presented, but they haven't been signed. The governor vetoed the income tax reduction that was put out, and then the gas tax reduction did not get immediate effect in the Senate, which basically means, so whenever a bill passes, its impact is 90 days sine die. So it doesn't take effect until 90 days after the end of session, which typically is around April 1 of the next year. When they passed the gas tax, removing the Michigan gas tax, they were not able to get immediate effect in the Senate, which means it wouldn't take place until April of 2023. And so that will give the governor, I think, the excuse to not sign it. She has not vetoed it yet. What she did indicate, though, is that she was supportive of removing the sales tax on gasoline, which will have an impact on the school aid fund. And so some of this is just sort of negotiations going back and forth. And, if you remember, this all started when she said the federal government ought to suspend its gas tax. The legislature said, well, we can do the state one right now.
The state one right now, right.
She said no. They got into a big fight. People scored points, political points. And then
The reason why she didn't want to do it, though, is because of the impact it would make on the school aid fund?
I think it was more on the impact that it would make on the ability to have road funds to be able to fix the roads.
Oh,
The
okay.
federal one doesn't have as much impact
Okay.
on what the projects are.
Okay.
So, so all of that to say that those things have taken up a lot of the air in the room as they're sort of negotiating in the media. That's only going to continue to get more as we sort of move more towards filing deadline and election day. It's just, this is a political year in a hyper chaotic atmosphere right now with everything going on. So,
May I ask one more question?
Yeah, of course.
About the income tax? Now, she does not want to reduce the income tax, is that it?
right,
That's
so,
correct.
yeah, so what the legislature proposed was a 0.3% reduction in the income tax from 4.2 to 3.9, and then also a increased deduction for seniors on their pension. I think they doubled it. I'm gonna say 40 to 80,000. Don't quote me on that. And they increased the deduction. They did not reduce the corporate income tax in that bill, which had been a proposal in the Senate's original package. When they finally did send something to her, it was the income tax reduction, it was the doubling of the deduction for pensions, and I think there were some child care tax credits in those as well.
And why would she be opposed to those?
So it was a $2.5 billion hole in the budget. That was the main thing. So there's been lots of discussion about how these funds are going to be spent. And one of the things that everyone has said is we can't have ongoing costs.
Right.
These are one-time funds. And she framed it as these are ongoing costs and we shouldn't do that. And the legislature said we disagree. And here, she vetoed it and here we are. It will be part of a broader tax negotiation and budget negotiation as things go. This was part of the theater to, as I like to say, sometimes you got to walk around the block to get to your neighbor's house. You could just go to your neighbor's house. That's an option. It usually doesn't work that way.
Well, and quite frequently, there's a lot of talk of what they're going to do, but until we get to the May revenue estimating conference, that's usually they're not too serious. I shouldn't say too serious, but this is one of those where things get really serious after we know what that looks like. And those revenues have been continue to trend in the right direction based on everything we're seeing and hearing. So there may even be more funding. I don't know if you're hearing anything otherwise.
Yeah, you have the same concept that allowed the school aid fund to expand during COVID is still in effect, right? You had a whole bunch of federal dollars get injected in, and that led to spending, which increased general fund and sales tax collections. You have the same, there are additional federal dollars that are being spent and are going to be spent, maybe not as quickly as folks want, but those bring new dollars into the economy. I mentioned somebody the other day that $400 a car
Yep.
for the insurance, it's about $3 billion. Well, if everybody spends that on things that are sales tax, which is a high likelihood, you could have $150 million added to the school aid fund just from that. So all that spending of stimulus and other dollars will continue to prop it up
Yeah, stimulate the economy.
for a while, and
Yeah.
then when it crashes,
We'll deal with that.
it's going to be ugly. But,
Yeah.
so,
I would just add a few other things, that looking at Krista's notes, that critical shortage legislation, I want to emphasize how important that is to us. I mean, that's a huge win. If you look at your agenda and that talent retention recruitment being one of the top priorities, this giving us more flexibility to bring back retirees is another tool in the arsenal that we're trying to deploy to really plug holes all over the district. The
Now,
other
there
thing-
shouldn't be any real opposition to that, should there?
Nope, it's looking like it's expecting a full Senate vote in the next couple weeks. Probably, is that gonna be after spring break, I'm
I
guessing?
bet they do it next week.
Okay, next week, okay.
Or this week. I think they simply have to concur.
Well, actually, this is his report from last week, so
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
you're right. This week or next week at the
I'll
latest.
check real quick.
All right. The other thing, just on the budgets, what the rumor is, according to Chris Glass, and Rusty, you can confirm, is that the House and the Senate are looking to release their own budgets. So this is pretty common. The governor comes out with her executive budget, and then upwards of a couple weeks to a month later, the House and the Senate will come out with their own versions. They then will kind of pass their budgets respectively, and eventually, shortly after, they cross and will go to conference committee, where a handful of people get in the room are going to ultimately decide what these final budgets will be.
Yeah, typically, typically the legislature will try to have something out before spring break to sort of signal where they are. I'm hearing that probably will not happen until after spring break, which, by the way, will be just coinciding with our Capitol Day. So it'll be perfect.
Good timing.
Our timing will be good.
May I ask another question, please? I know you said that we're in favor of these things that might allow teachers to come back in the classroom or provide for other people to be subs and so on and so forth. But they have not talked anymore about high school graduates doing it.
This was the student teachers being able to teach without supervision in the
I-
classroom.
This is the one where they reduce if an existing school employee could be a substitute teacher, so if we had a parapro or we had a nutrition service or a custodian, and they had minimum credit requirements, it was basically you had to have a high school diploma.
Got it.
And work specifically in the school district. So you have to work for a school. That's where they're kind of saying, hey, they have relationships. They're around them. What we've done is start to look at how, if we have individuals who express interest in substituting, then we have a process by which we would kind of vet and onboard utilizing that legislation. But as of right now, and Dr. Roby, I don't know if there's anything I may not have been in on, but we're not fully utilizing this at this point. I mean, it's kind of a last.
But that is something that we can do. They have not.
correct.
That legislation did pass, and it only goes through June of this year.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that only goes through June of this year. This critical shortage legislation would be a 2-year sunset at this point.
Okay.
But that's subject to change too.
And then I know we had talked a little bit about one of the bills that's running around is 5722, which basically would make curriculum and lesson plans and others require them to be online. So transparency. As I said earlier, we represent a curriculum assessment company or a benchmark assessment company, and we're seeing these pop up all over the country. It isn't Michigan specific. It's almost a piece of model legislation that somebody's floating around that seems to be catching on. There was a committee hearing on it. There hadn't been an additional committee hearing, but I think some folks are hearing there may be. So I've got some feelers out to sort of see where that is. But that doesn't feel like something that the governor would ultimately sign, but it.
So for transparency in relationship to whether or not we're teaching appropriate history.
Yes.
You can imagine where this is stemming
Depending on whose version of appropriate you choose on that particular day, right?
Was this the same one where they wanted people to post their lesson plans by like July 1st, or is that a separate legislation?
Yes, it's in that same vein. I don't know if that's all buried
I
in
don't
that
know. Yeah, I
one
don't
piece
know,
of
yeah.
legislation, but it's the same swirl.
Right.
swirl. That's a good one.
Right. And I can tell you, there are companies out there who are concerned about it because it's copyright.
Yep.
There's
Sure,
intellectual property, there's all kinds of,
That was going to be my question. Like, we pay millions of dollars to have access to these programs, and we're supposed to post it for
anyone
everyone to
use,
access.
right.
Now, what's interesting is that parents already have the right to review and look at these things. That's actually part of your board policy. We just talked about it today at executive cabinet. So it's kind of like looking for a problem that needs to be solved. And you know,
Because parents have always been able to do that. I've been out of the classroom for a long time, but, parents would always have the right to come in and, not necessarily your daily lesson plans, but what books are the kids going to read and so on and so forth. So it's not new, and I don't think teachers would object to that, but posting your lesson plans on a daily basis, that might be a bridge too far.
The other thing is, with this policy, they're talking about if you make adjustments, and so you post, let's say you post your lesson plans for the day or even for the week, and you see that your scholars need reteaching or whatever, and if you don't update it, then there can be a penalty to the school and the district. And those of you who have taught, you know that sometimes you have your lesson plans, of course, and you see that, okay, you have a fire drill second hour, and so you don't get to that particular lesson, or, you see that there's something else that has taken place.
Sometimes students want to debate what you said in classroom, which is why I'm late
Absolutely.
today. It's like,
And
well,
so-
shoot, now I got to do
if
Wednesday.
you're not-
We shouldn't have
Today.
debate in the classroom.
And so it's a way to penalize schools. And they even had talked about up to a 5% penalty, because I had asked the question, I said, is that per incident or is that after so many incidents? And when I talked to Dr. Rice, he said, oh, what they're proposing is that it could be per incident. And I'm like, well, how do large districts such as mine, if I have a teacher who's not on schedule with what they've posted, our budget could be just,
Technically, you just need
Punish
20
the
incidents in
teachers.
one day to lose a whole day,
yeah.
right? Right. Yeah. So I'm going to do some more digging on that one just to figure it out. I asked the question on Friday, but haven't gotten anything back yet.
You think that you'll have the tools that you need to challenge that legislation if it goes further?
I think there'll be a unique coalition of folks who wouldn't want it to pass that way, not just school districts.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like these textbook companies and all sorts of people.
Yeah. Yeah, like I said, from the benchmark side, it's a proprietary, program. So.
The last thing that I would focus on is just the statewide ballot proposal. There is a For MI Kids, For Our Schools initiative that launched this week that's in contrast to essentially the voucher proposal. So right now, they're circulating petitions. The pro-voucher ballot measure is circulating and needs to gather 340,000 signatures by, I believe it's end of May, in order for it to be placed on the November ballot. This is something we're going to continue to monitor. The funds would be used in public, in private schools, and essentially would be like an income tax deduction.
Right, income tax credit.
Tax
Yep,
credit,
yep,
excuse
credit,
me.
Yep, credit.
So this is something we're going to continue to monitor. Last time a voucher proposal went before voters, it just got crushed by 70% of the vote. This is a little different, so we're going to continue to monitor it, but it's something that we were talking about earlier as well. We have to be kind of careful because there's certain things we can't do using GRPS time, dime, and resources to expressly advocate for or against ballot measures.
Now, what is the name of this one that is for the charters?
Not for
That
charters.
is a good
Let,
question.
let
It's
kids
got a
learn
cute-
or something like
what
that.
is the name?
I,
I don't,
Called Let Kids Learn.
let kids learn, that's it.
Yeah.
I've seen them out. They're like, ask me. One person had the misfortune of asking me to sign it, so.
and what about the one that, I don't know,
The person that asked you didn't know anything
does
about
it
it.
MASB have one, or is it just interested parties? Because I heard that there was another one to contradict this one.
So the Let Kids Learn is the one that was out there that was based on the vetoed legislation.
That's right.
The governor and others, I can't say it's the governor, excuse me. Others are promoting this for my kids, for our schools, was an initiative launched this week to counter the ballot proposals. If I understand
That's
correctly.
how I understand it,
they're
too.
they're trying to do an education campaign so that people won't
Sign
sign
the
the
petition.
other
Okay.
petition.
That's
It isn't-
correct.
It isn't a competing petition, it
Okay.
is don't sign.
Okay,
Yeah.
it's not a petition, it's an educational.
Right.
Okay.
It's the
That's
Be Like
right.
Tony Baker campaign. Don't sign.
That's a good name for it right there.
It's good.
I don't think that we could talk about that. So, yeah, because the way they, again, you're right, I mean, the young person who had the misfortune of asking me also, obviously didn't know. I mean, he probably thought he was trying to make money, and he probably thought he was doing something to help kids.
He's getting $1 a signature.
He's like, with this, will you sign this to help kids get access to schools? It's like, well, yeah, that sounds like a good
Yeah,
thing to do.
sounds good.
So, and then I told him he had to learn what he's asking people to do before he does it. But I've seen them they were at Ferris already, like last week, asking people so they're out there. So what is it there, so you would have the option to divert your income taxes to this fund? Is that?
Let's say that you decided to a foundation, you were gonna, the Grand Rapids Community Foundation, for lack of a better example, was gonna send 30 kids to private school. You could donate to that foundation for that purpose and get an income tax deduction on the state income tax.
Okay.
So essentially, you would get a credit, your 4% credit for putting those dollars in, that you could take it off of your income taxes.
But it wouldn't come out of the school aid fund?
No. It would simply allow for that no money would come directly from the state to the school, but the person donating would receive the tax credit.
Right.
And so there's a financial benefit to them to give to the foundation.
Yeah, it could mean less revenue, obviously in income taxes for the state. And then it could also mean less revenue for school districts who lose students
Right.
to
I see.
private schools. So it has some fiscal impact to state budget, but then also potentially to school districts.
And it does sort of open the door for further conversations down the road, right? Nothing happens in a vacuum.
So I think that's all we have for legislative update. If there are any other questions, just a reminder, we have Capitol Day coming up on April 12th. Rusty, I don't know if there's anything offhand that you have. We'll be providing you with more details, certainly by the end of next week, because this is literally the Tuesday after spring break that we'll be going to and from. We will have scholars with us. We know at least 2 who volunteered from the Scholars Advisory Council, and they meet again this Thursday, so we'll have a little bit more. But it's basically, it's going to be 8 to 5. I mean, it's going to be a full day.
We'll start meetings at 9. We'll go through 4, probably 3:30, 4 o'clock. We obviously have our legislative lunches where we have folks come in. Anybody that was sort of in the delegation that wasn't able to be there, we'll try to get meetings with them. But then we also try to go outside of our delegation to talk with policy staff, leadership folks, appropriators who are in charge of those budgets, to have a conversation beyond just our local delegation. And then we'll probably do a lunch in our loft
Do it at the
where we
loft.
invite all the Kent County legislators to come in and say hello.
All be present for that day? Is there?
No, I'm going to be out of town.
Okay.
I just put it on my calendar, so I think that should be free.
Great.
The other thing that we should just update them on is that the subcommittee chair of appropriations, Brad Paquette, had asked for, in particular, GRPS and some other school districts, if we could provide some teachers who could testify in committee as to why they felt like teachers weren't valued, what made them not want to stay in the profession, and sort of working through that topic. And John was able to get a couple of just rock stars who basically kicked off the entire testimony and did a great job of engaging the
I
members.
saw it was very good.
Yeah.
Yep, I sent
thought-
them the video
Oh,
link.
great, yeah, they did a wonderful job, but I just thought that should be highlighted too, for a couple of reasons. One, that we had good folks there, but two, they reached out to us because they knew that we would try to be helpful in what they were trying to do too, which I hope is encourage people to get into teaching as a noble profession. And the messages were very consistent across all the testimony, is that people didn't feel appreciated. And surprisingly, most of them, it was not about money,
About pride and respect.
not being appreciated. So
Yep, not being appreciated.
kudos to the district for being willing to
Yeah, and
step up.
that's
and
consistent
respond.
with our kind of legislation. I mean, as we've often sought to be a go-to for these committee chairs. And so the fact that he thought of us and said, hey, I want GRPS there, that's a good position for us to be in from an advocacy standpoint. And we're going to continue to build those relationships.
Now, did all the school board members get that link that you sent to us?
I can't remember if I just sent it to you or if I sent that to the whole board.
But the one that-
I thought I sent it to the whole
Yeah,
board.
Julie ended up resending it. to
Yeah,
everybody,
it was in
yeah.
my letter, and then
Oh.
she resent
Okay.
it, so everybody should have it.
Okay, good.
Yeah, it was well done.
And I think that's all we've got.
And just to backtrack a little bit to the legislative update, there's nothing that we need to take a stance on at this time or do.
We're just waiting on dyslexia to sort of see the reaction. And frankly, I think with the platform, there should be the flexibility if our folks come back and say it's bad,
Yep.
we can say that we
Do,
have concerns.
and one question I had for that, do you believe that if it's something that does get support and get some traction, that they may attach funding to it?
So, so they would not attach funding to the policy bills, but they might have a budget implementation bill that would attach funding. My guess is that they would say you get school aid fund dollars, but you know,
Right.
that would be my guess.
Right.
But it's a fair question to sort of bring up, and I'm sure it will come up in the opposition that, you know, this may be an unfunded mandate. So.
Well, if there are no other comments, then this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.